Mike, this might be the end of an era. The Arizona Cardinals era. We back. Team recap. Mic'd up. We talking about the Arizona Cardinals. How you doing?
I'm not going to lie to the people before. I always ask Mike, do you have an intro? And this time he sat there for about 10 seconds with just a blank expression on his face. Didn't say a word, and then he just said, yep, I got it. I said, is it good? He said, nope. And then we went. And that I actually think it was all right, Mike. I'm not going to lie. So
Thank you.
speaking of, I guess, all right, maybe I'm giving him too much credit, the Cardinals draft. So Mike, what were your general thoughts on, as always, the Arizona draft?
Yeah, obviously a lot of people thought one of the best values in the first round was Isaiah Simmons. I think me and you were a little down on him. I think he's we're seeing that tweener safety linebacker. We've been seeing a lot of them come out. But he really is a tweener. Like, he really does kind of fall in the middle. He really isn't if you put him as an off-ball linebacker, lining behind the D tackles, he gets caught up. He gets caught up in blocks. He really doesn't have a great vision to find the ball carrier. And then if you put him out back, he's fast. Like, obviously we said he was kind of a combine freak, but he's not the greatest safety I've seen in coverage. He's not necessarily for more of a tweener safety, kind of like we're thinking of Derwin James, Jamal Adams, kind of those players. He's not around the ball like those two players. He's not as athletic, not like in-game speed. I don't see as those two players. He's kind of really a tweener, like more of a Jabril Peppers than he is a Derwin James and a Jamal Adams. And I'm not saying he is Jabril Peppers. I think he'd be a lot better player, and if you utilize him in the right spot, hopefully we see a lot better from him. I think he's a better athlete than Jabril. He definitely has better football instincts and IQ than both of them, but they're not great by no means. He definitely, and it's kind of funny, he might kind of fall in that Deion Buchanan kind of space, which is very funny coming from this team. So hopefully they can utilize him, use him in a position that kind of best suits his need. He kind of fits. Some of his best plays are lined up, not necessarily 10 to 12 yards back or necessarily 5 yards off the ball. It's kind of in that middle spot where he lines up, has enough time. The play's in front of him. He lets it develop a little bit, and then he kind of makes that play.
Yeah, see, Simmons is really interesting to me because it's like you watch him and they put him everywhere, and that's the appeal to a lot of people. I know a lot of Lions fans are saying, "Oh, pick him at three. You can play him. He can play everything. He can play edge. He played cornerback. He played nickel. He played safety, inside, outside linebacker." Problem is, how well does he play all those? And at the end of the day, he can only play one of those at once, So it's like, what am I going to do with a guy who is maybe 80% of Jamal Adams or maybe 85% of Jalen Smith? Or, what am I going to do with that when I don't think that his ceiling at any of those positions is as high as those guys, but he does have the traits and can do it all. I realize the value in a set piece, and I really like how you put that. I do think he'll be best used in the NFL as that kind of new age safety. I do think that him playing that Derwin or Jamal role will be best because I don't think that he's able to really get off blocks. I don't think that – and before you come at us with all of the sack numbers in college, look at who he played with in college, and a lot of those sacks are designed blitzes. Don't get confused. There's very few plays where he's executing a pass rush move, bending around the edge, and bringing down the quarterback. That just doesn't happen with Simmons. It's a lot of high motor plays or coverage sacks and all that kind of stuff. And then in the run game, I don't love his decision-making ability. You often see him kind of wavering and just trying to figure out, like, does he want to drop? Does he want to go? And it's like he's best to me when he's in that deep safety role, maybe not like free safety deep, but kind of like you said, that intermediate to deep role where everything's in front of him, and then you just go straight line speed and you let the athleticism take over. That's when I think he's best. And I really do wonder if that's how they're going to use him in the NFL, because I do feel like a lot of people think here they're getting some all-pro linebacker, all-pro safety, and I just don't think that that's real, or an all-pro edge rusher for all I know. I mean, some people thought he was a 3-4 outside linebacker, and that is just, to me, that's offensive because you've probably only watched his highlights, not his film, So from there, I guess we'll go into the rest of the picks. I'll be honest, on draft day, I thought that they were solid value, but kind of the more that I've dug into a couple of these guys, the Josh Joneses and the Lecky Fotus, the more I don't necessarily love the picks. With Josh Jones, my man he's just raw. He's a super big, long arm tackle, but man, he might have the worst footwork of any tackle that I've actually watched in the past 3 or 4 years. Like, they use him in a lot of really unique ways. Like, you rarely see a left tackle pulling backside on a power play to the right. Well, they'll use him in that, but for some reason, when the ball is snapped, he takes a step forward with his left foot and then he goes. Like, that's not how you pull ever. You're either skip pulling or trap pulling. Like, you're not, at no point are you moving forward with your outside foot. That just doesn't make sense. In pass protection, he's often moving that outside foot instead of at a 45-degree angle or straight back. He's often moving it forward, and it's putting him in a compromising position. So he has some good hands when he can get on you. He's a strong guy, and he really is a good athlete, but he's just raw. And I don't know if Arizona will be kind of the best place for him to go, because we see them right now with other raw guys in the roster, with like a DJ Humphries. It just doesn't. I don't know. I just don't know if he's going to be a left tackle in the NFL. I really don't think he will. I think he'll probably translate best to right, and I don't know if he should start right away either, because we have seen guys who have ugly footwork in college. And when I say ugly, I mean ugly footwork in like a Colton Miller. We've seen him kind of pan out a little bit in the NFL. You can teach footwork. You can't teach intangibles, so I get that. And you're getting him at 72, so I don't necessarily hate it, but I hate some of the traits he has, And then in Fotu, man, I'm not going to lie. I put on his film every day before we do this. I like to put on like one film of these guys, just get to reinforce. And with Fotu, with his first step, I had to make sure and check I wasn't on 0.75 speed. Like that, my man just has a slow first step. And I get that he's a nose or a one tech, but one phrase that we've liked to borrow from another content creator is he's a trash can full of dirt. That's what they call guys who they're hard to move, but they're not moving much either. And Fotu, he's kind of like a trash can, like half full of dirt, if that makes any sense at all. He doesn't move forward, but he's also not that tough to move back either. Like, once you get into him, you can just drive him off the ball. And I just question a lot of what we see with him. He's non-existent in the passing game in terms of as a pass rusher. He barely uses his hands. It just looks like he's moving in like 0.75 or 0.5 speed. And I just don't love it.
You know what we do love and we do know? We know Samino. Kind of a steal in this draft. Benjamin, we put on a little bit of film of that 7th-round running back, and hopefully he makes the roster and can prove to be kind of in that stable and maybe a third option. But we put some film on, and he got that kind of a slender 5'9", 195. But, man, he has some athleticism, man. And for a team that might just not have a bell cow running back that can kind of carry the ball 25 times a game, might be a nice little guy, nice little piece in there, man. For being 195 and a smaller back, man, he very seldomly gets pushed backwards. He's always moving forward, and if you get him to the outside in some space, he can make a linebacker or safety miss. We saw that in against Oregon, and we watched Arizona. And I think he might be a nice little guy to watch out for, kind of not maybe in fantasy land. He's not there yet, obviously, but to add that kind of to the stable of running backs they're going to be having, I think might be a really nice pickup for them.
No, I completely agree. It's very rare that after I go over those last kind of film sessions and kind of get my thoughts together before these, that I tell Mike, like, hey, you got to put this guy on. And today I was like, Mike, you have to put Benjamin on one more time, because just the way he sets up defenders and just he's jab stepping, he is absolutely breaking guys' ankles, and it's disgusting. It almost reminds me of, I don't want to say, but it almost reminds me of like a LaShawn McCoy type running back, where they can make guys miss in space. I think that, as you said, he almost goes backwards less than McCoy. I think that he's better at falling forward. He might not be as great out of the backfield as a receiver, but he's not bad either. And I think he was the victim of bad quarterback play, bad offensive line play. And, man, I really don't – initially I had a 4th-round grade on him, but after revisiting the film today, he might have – I probably would put a 3rd on him. I'm not going to lie. And I realized that we watched 2 of his better games, but still, like, the traits are there. The traits are absolutely there. So to get him in the 7th round, that might be the steal of the draft for me. Another pick that I did like was actually Rashard Lawrence out of LSU. I think that if Fotu is going to be your nose tackle I guess if he's going to be your nose tackle ever, you drafted a 4-tech to go along with him in Lawrence. And a lot of people like what Fotu offers. Personally, I'm more of a Lawrence guy. I think that he has great leverage. That's what kind of stood out on tape to me, is just he was able to take on double teams, whereas Fotu was getting driven back into the parking lot. Lawrence was able to kind of weather the storm, even going against great offensive lines. He was he was making Andrew Thomas kind of, you were questioning, like, what is actually going on here? Because Lawrence was able to get into him. He has really good hand placement. And there's times where he has a very explosive first step. And sometimes I thought I was watching him in 1.25 speed, So to get him in the fourth round, I think that's really solid value. He might be your fourth tech for a long time to come if he gets the opportunity. So we've probably spent too much time in this draft class, though. Mike, you ready to get to this offense?
Yeah, you talked way too much about the leaky trash can. Let's get into it.
So I guess since I talked way too much before, I'll let you talk about this offense. I know you like a lot of the pieces. So Mike, what are your thoughts on Arizona's offense?
Yeah, I think obviously you got to start with the DeAndre Hopkins trade. It just absolute win. Absolute beautiful weapon to add to Kyler Murray. Obviously, Kyler Murray chose to promise last year. It obviously me and you didn't appreciate it during the draft when you just drafted Josh Rosen the year before that, but he really did show he might be that kind of playmaker, all around, kind of do it all quarterback. So I think to add a wide receiver like DeAndre Hopkins, who I think it's hard to argue he's not a top 3 wide receiver in the league. Obviously, you call it a win, and not a much draft capital. David Johnson, a second, and a couple late rounders? Am I missing anything?
Nope.
Absolute steal. It's a dumb trade from the Texans, as we did talk about during the Texans video. But to add that with Christian Kirk, kind of an ascending young wide receiver who is now going to be able to play in that number 2 spot where he belongs. Christian Kirk, I think he is a number 2.
Whoa.
I'm not selling out Larry Fitz yet. We'll get there.
Larry.
We'll get there. But I think to give Christian Kirk that number 2 spot, he's obviously going to be elevated. I think that's going to help him out a lot. And you can't forget Larry Fitz. Fitz is obviously just been just a stable for Arizona. He's a Hall of Fame wide receiver, first ballot, class act, and he's some class A1 on the field. Him moving over to that kind of slot position, he still makes plays. It's amazing at his age that he does so. So to have that maybe as your I'll say they have like a 2A, 2B situation. Because I think this might be the year that Christian Kirk kind of has to take over that number 2 role, and Larry might have to hit the back burners. But, man, he hasn't yet, so I could be totally wrong. Hope I am, because, man, Larry's still kicking it.
Man, I don't know, Mike. Benjamin Button, he gets younger with age, so maybe maybe Larry Fitzgerald will be the same way.
The jokes, man, the jokes.
Maybe Larry Fitzgerald will be the same way. No, in all seriousness, I agree with you with a lot of what you said. This is a really dynamic weapons core. Obviously you have questions on the offensive line, no doubt. But when you look at that wide receiver core, it stacks up with the best of them. It really does. And that's not just a testament to Hopkins. Obviously he is, like you said, top 3. But Kirk and Fitzgerald, and then Andy Isabella as kind of like that dark horse that you can use as almost like that Anthony Miller type guy. You can use him a little bit as like a Curtis Samuel type guy. You can use him in that kind of mold. And then you have the capabilities of Hopkins and Kirk, who can both catch the ball deep downfield, who are both, at least in Hopkins' case, solid route runners. You have Larry Fitz, the reliable target. I don't hate it. I really don't hate it. I always talk about make your wide receiver core like a basketball team. They're kind of there. They're kind of there.
But real quick, speaking of a basketball team, the running back core. There's actually no correlation. I'm just messing with you. I just want to get into that. I think there's some questions there. I think they have obviously Kenny Drake showed some promise when he went over to the Cardinals. Had some really good games. I think you said 260-yard games towards the end of the season, and he started off 110 versus the 49ers. He showed some promise, but I don't know. Obviously, they need a stable. He's not your number 1 bell cow running back. So I think Chase Edmonds and, it might not be too bad. And I think another one you have to add to this stable is Kyler Murray. Obviously, he's a dual-threat quarterback. You should – I think, what did he have, 400 to almost 500 yards last year rushing? We probably will see the next step there. I think as he starts to slow the game down for himself, start seeing things a little quicker, I think he might be able to hit that 600 to 700 mark. And he might not want to use his legs that much, as obviously they kind of, for longevity purposes, I don't think the Cardinals want him to run that much. But as this game slows down for him, he might be able to see some open holes, kind of as Lamar Jackson did last year. I'm not saying he's going to be Lamar Jackson, but I'm just saying as the game slows down, they kind of see those opportunities to run the ball and still come pretty clean off of some of those runs and not get hit by that second level.
No, I agree. I don't think I'm as high on Murray as a lot of people are. I know some people think he's going to be an MVP candidate. I'm not quite there yet. I'm
No,
a
not
step
there.
or two, probably 2 or 3 steps behind that actually. But one other addition that I think they could and maybe should go after. I know they only have $7 million cap space, but you look at this roster and outside of their offensive line holes, really the other spot that stands out to me as almost a hole is that tight end position. And I keep on mentioning them, but man, somebody's got to go to Tampa Bay and get OJ Howard out of there. Like free my man OJ. You heard it like 2 decades ago, and you're hearing it here on Mic'd Up today. Free OJ. Just what he offers in terms of a playmaker once the ball is in his hands, as a run blocker that could really help out this offensive line, honestly, and really just as that safety blanket for Murray underneath. I realize they have that in 87-year-old Larry Fitz, but I do think a guy like OJ would be there to add to that longevity of this core because we can't expect Larry to be here for that much longer, I hope. So with that being said, Mike, you ready to get into the defense?
Yeah, real quick, free agent that you don't have to give up draft capital for. That might help this team, young team. Delaney Walker, I think might be also a nice little pickup they get for cheap. Obviously, they don't have the cap space, so just want to mention that one out there if they didn't want to trade away draft capital. But let's get into the defense.
So the defense, Mike, right away, what you see is there's a lot of solid pieces. Honestly, you think of kind of the 4th place Cardinals team, and you wouldn't expect their defense to have all pros and Chandler Jones and Patrick Peterson, potentially a future all pro and Buddha and Jordan Hicks. So what are your general thoughts on this defense here?
Yeah, I think obviously I really kind of like that interior rotation they have going. Me and you were at least I believe you were as well. Jonathan Bullard, kind of a player that never necessarily presented. He never really showed up. He never kind of turned to what we thought he was going to be. But he also got drafted a little bit later. Maybe the opportunity hasn't presented itself. We really liked him in that 3-tech. Obviously, he's going to be playing more of a 5 or a 4 with the Cardinals, but that might be a really nice spot for him. I'm hoping to see him blossom. But obviously, Jordan Phillips, you got the space eater. Then you have the leaky trash can to kind of learn and sit behind him. Maybe just get in on some 3rd down, maybe short yard situations. Corey Peters. Zach Gallen hasn't really showed up too much, but he showed some promise coming out of Boston College. But with all those big bodies they have up middle, man, they have Chandler Jones. And obviously they really don't have necessarily a great number 2 option with their pass rush. But, man, Chandler Jones is kind of that 1 and 2 option. And he showed it last year. What did he have, 17 and a half, 18? 19 sacks. He kind of – the player, I don't know if he gets enough credit with but I think he's starting to get noticed with those Von Millers, J.J. Watt's a little bit behind, but some of those top-tier DNs and pass rushers, he's right there with them, if not top 2, top 3, top 5 at least. You can't go lower than that.
No, I completely agree. Obviously, Chandler's fantastic. The only question, as you brought it up, is that number 2 guy. Last year, second on their sacks was Terrell Suggs with 5.5, and he's not here anymore. So 3rd on the team was, I believe, Corey Peters with 3 sacks, and that's not going to cut it. You get 25 sacks with one guy, but if nobody else is going to contribute, then what are we actually doing here? But I do agree with you that a lot of those pieces on their front 3. I do like Jordan Phillips. I like Bullard. I like Zach Allen. I like the potential they have going forward, especially. But I think that those are solid guys who can every now and then make a splash play, but they're really there for the edgy guys to capitalize. You paid Devondre Campbell $6 million this year. You expect big things out of him. You obviously drafted Isaiah Simmons, and you're expecting him to make plays, even if he's not lined up as a linebacker. I know that's how I have him listed. You're expecting him to make plays, and Jordan Hicks, obviously, he can make plays behind that kind of front 3. So I don't hate it. I don't hate the kind of the build we're going with here. Obviously, I think you could have better players, especially across the D-line, but it's not terrible. It's really not terrible. And then what's especially not terrible is, and I know you love Buddha Baker especially, is the secondary, Mike. So what are your thoughts on Buddha and the rest of the secondary?
Yeah, obviously Pat Pete. I don't think he has to say much more than that. He's just been a consistent top-tier corner. Most years it's top 5 corner. You can't beat that. And obviously you have Byron Murphy coming out of Washington, second-year player, 2nd round. Hopefully you can see him develop. And obviously when you have a year to cornerback's a rough position to learn it. That transition's never easy. Learning from Pat Pete makes it a little bit easier. So hopefully we see the next step from him. And then obviously Buddha Baker. That man he plays like a linebacker at like what, 5'8", 5'9", 190. He just has a knack for being around the ball, making some tackles. And I know you said secondary, but I'd like to move up a little bit. Player I think is underappreciated, Jordan Hicks. Sometimes that man plays like a safety from the linebacker position. He doesn't get enough credit for being like kind of that coverage linebacker. We always say that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that coverage linebacker. Then we get one like Jordan Hicks, and I don't think he gets enough credit for actually being that coverage linebacker. On top of that, getting 150 tackles. He plays like a strong safety. He's sideline to sideline. He can cover. I think he had, 4 interceptions last year. He is a do-it-all player, and I don't think Jordan Hicks gets enough credit for that.
No, I completely agree. Hicks is one of, if not the most undervalued, especially linebacker in the league. You know, we often, when we're looking at those kind of underrated guys, we're talking about the Levante Davids or the Eric Kendricks, but Jordan Hicks should be right there because he really could play any position across a linebacker core. He could be your Sam, he could be your Will, or he could be your Mike, and you're not going to see a drop-off because he can do it all. And, you know, a lot of people undervalued him when he was in Philadelphia. He comes here, and obviously in a smaller market, he's almost been more undervalued when I do think that he's just hitting his peak. I think that, like you said, 150 tackles last year for him, 148 for Budda Baker. Like, these guys are just fantastic at getting to the ball, bringing the ball carrier down, and preventing those big plays. The only question is, are the guys around them going to be able to elevate their play enough either? You know, after those two, I don't think anybody had more than 78 tackles last year, and that was a cornerback. So that's kind of scary. But I do think that some of the pieces are in place to where maybe I know a lot of people think that this could be a potential wild card team going into next year. Do you think that the pieces are there, Mike, or are they still maybe a year, 2 years away?
Yeah, it's hard. They kind of fall right on the teeter. I think this is a better talented team than the Los Angeles Rams. I really do. I think their weapons. They both have questions on the offensive line, and I think the defense is hard because you could just look at most of the talent and say the Cardinals are better, but they don't have Aaron Donald. And he really does account for so much. But they do have Chandler Jones, which is, man, if you're going to go like D lineman, Chandler Jones isn't there, obviously, in impact. But man, you'd probably put him pretty close if you were just counting down D lineman. So I think they might be able to take that. The Seahawks are hard too because I kind of not a hater for the Seahawks, but I think they often overplay their talent, and that just kind of speaks to the team and Pete Carroll, what he does. He really does speak to teams that kind of get counted out, but they're never counted out because they somehow keep ending up in the playoffs, and I don't understand how because they really never are that talented. But I think the Cardinals, I think they can make a run. I think they really can make a wild card run, and even the 49ers might take a step back. You now know what they are. I think this is a fun division. I really think it could be a toss-up. I wouldn't be surprised to see this team winning the division. I would be surprised, but it's not unprecedented. I wouldn't absolutely shock me. So I think this is a really good team, and I'm excited to see what they have this year.
I agree that's really exciting. The only thing I kind of compare this team to, though, is almost like the Browns of last year, you know, where a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon. They think that they're a wild card, maybe division winner, potentially a late playoff team. And I know not you or I, but a lot of people in the national media seem to think so. And I really just think that you need to upgrade those tackles. You need to upgrade that offensive line. You need to add some more pieces to that defense. You already have a solid baseline, but surround the stars with a little bit more quality players, you know? And I think that they did a decent enough job of that in the NFL draft, even though I was kind of hating on some of their picks, especially the value of them. But I do think that there's a chance. Obviously, Vegas right now has their win total set at 7.5. The Rams set at 8. The Seahawks set at 9. So they're tightly packed in there. You know, really Vegas is just saying anything could happen, but we would take the Seahawks and Rams above them. And personally, I would as well. I do think this team will finish 4th. I know you would put them over the Rams, obviously. But I just don't think they're there yet. I think they can be there, give them another year of experience, give these young guys this class that they just brought in, give them not a redshirt year, but give them a year of experience, and then we'll see where we can go next year. But
yeah, well, I like to talk about motivation a little bit here. You look at the first 5-week stretch, some very winnable games. If they start off 4-1, you might get this young team rolling, moving, get some energy in there. And they have, obviously, they're young, for the most part, a young team. Energy, I think, could do a whole lot for this team. So if they could really start 4-1, I think that'll speak volumes, and I think it kind of shows through. The schedule really isn't that bad. We just did the Rams video, I thought it looked like a much harder schedule for the Rams. That obviously from the Redskins to the Jets, all four super winnable games. If anything, they probably should win at least 3 of those games, in my opinion. And then you kind of, you have a rough stretch with the Cowboys and Seahawks, but then you got the Dolphins, then you got the Patriots. I think the Seahawks are a very winnable team. I think the Bills are a very winnable team. So I think if they could take one of those games, the Dolphins and Patriots as well, man, we could. I think I just have it right there. 8 wins? So, and we're not even through the back end of the schedule. So I think I take the over on that 7.5. I think this team might compete, but that's just my thoughts.
No, the only problem that I have with it is I almost wish the schedule was flipped. I wish that like week 13 through 17 stretch was at the beginning, and then I wish the easy stuff was at the back half, because I do worry about experience with this team. And I think that it would be something to kind of be tested by the Rams twice, the 49ers, Eagles, Giants, who I believe in the Giants video, our third video, that you said that, you were looking forward to the Cardinals versus Giants game because you thought that those two teams would have a really competitive game. I know they did last year, but I think that that's a good test. And I would rather have those tests early in the year, and then once we have the experience under our belt and maybe we upset 2 teams, now we can get it rolling into the easy half. I'm almost worried that the schedule's the opposite way. And when this team isn't fully together yet, we don't have enough experience yet, we have the easier teams, and we could get upset by a team like the Redskins or the Lions or the Panthers or even the Jets, and then you hit, like you said, Cowboys, Seahawks, and I just worry that it's almost inverse to how I would have if I was a Cardinals fan, because I do think that, like you said, there are 8, 9, maybe even someone could argue 10 if you think they could take a game from the Seahawks, 49ers. There's 10 winnable games, but I just worry about the order that they're in, So if you guys are worried about the order that we're doing our mic'd up videos, if you're maybe a Patriots fan, Mike, and you're left crying at home over Brady and Gronk, and you just want to know what the roster looks like, man, leave a comment, say the Patriots, and, who are we doing next?
We'll cry with you and do the Patriots.
We will cry with you and do the Patriots. But the only way you're going to see us there is if you comment, if you like, if you subscribe. You know the deal. Mike, do you have anything else, or are we out of here?
I think we mic'd up and we mic'ing out. Deuces.